Hello soldiers, I'm King Link and today I'm reviewing Call of Duty Black Ops 4, or Blops 4. Yeah, this is a yearly installment of the Call of Duty franchise. Now, this is a long review, but before I begin, I feel like I need some disclosure here. I applied and was interviewed by Activision's High Moon Studios in November of last year. That's 2018 to anyone in the future. The position was closed, likely due to Bungie leaving Activision, and that's purely speculation on the situation on my part. I don't know anything about behind the scenes. I did pick up this game in preparation for the on-site interview. I was told I should hear from them in the beginning of 2019. I haven't yet. It's been 6 months. They said first half. But I am looking outside of the games industry right now. We'll talk about that hopefully soon, if not already. But with all this said, I feel like I can review this game fairly without a problem. But I do wish to disclose the working relationship in case it matters to anyone. In addition, this is part of the Humble Monthly Bundle, so that will be the beginning of my coverage of the bundle. Now, with all this said, let me be clear. I am going to kind of be harsh here. I do love the Call of Duty franchise, but I admit, I play them because of the single-player campaigns. They're not always perfect, but they're enjoyable for the roller coaster ride that they are. Black Ops 4 already has lost me. This is the first mainline Call of Duty that doesn't have a single-player component. Ish. We'll talk a bit about Specialist HQ and zombies, but the fact is, you're getting this to play online or through their server in some manner. In fact, if you don't connect online, I don't even believe you can play the tutorial as far as I understand it, and that kind of stinks. Speaking of which, we are going to be seeing zombies on the screen. I'm going to just show zombies here, except near the end, because I do have a preview that has already seen Specialist HQ multiplayer and the Blackout mode. If you want to see that, it's linked at the end of the video. Now, I'll be honest, I have a problem with the graphics here. These probably look okay, zombies look solid, as does multiplayer for the most part, but the textures will look a little bit weak at points. In Blackout though, they really seem to struggle on my system. I do admit I don't have the newest hardware, and I am working on getting a new system, but I've played a lot of games. Even while games like The Division didn't give me a great frame rate, well, the glitches I've seen here are a bit worse. Most of these have happened in Blackout, but let me run through a few of them. Sometimes guns don't load in, so it looks like I'm carrying and shooting nothing. That's a bonus problem when you're using iron sights and the gun model hasn't loaded in. This actually happened in multiple modes, including Specialist HQ, which isn't even an online mode. Blackout sometimes doesn't load in the walls of the building fast enough, and I can actually get a peek inside. I do have a theory that this could be done on purpose for cheating. In addition, the ground, player models, and some objects really look bad, and that's mostly in Blackout due to its bigger view distances, I guess. But the point is, if you're not on some serious hardware, probably in the last 2 years would be expected, the experience here can become kind of weak. Blackout looks noticeably worse than the other modes due to the size of the map mostly, but really the low graphics experience seems to be an afterthought here. Now I'm sure people are going to say, well, just upgrade, and I'm planning on it like I said, but this is in the Humble Monthly Bundle. That's the only reason I'm actually reviewing it, and people are buying these bundles who are already on a budget. So let's move on and talk about the game modes. Now, I'll go quickly. I want to talk about each one. I do have a full 10-page written review if you want to read that, but let's try to keep it a bit shorter here. Specialist HQ is the tutorial and kind of the story of Black Ops 4. There's 10 specialists, each with a tutorial mission, which awards a player-specific cutscene, and then after a skirmish against bots with one of the game modes, you get a second cutscene for the story. Now, it's interesting, but the story here is broken up by these 10-minute tutorial missions, so you'll spend maybe 20 missions to get one scene. The story isn't that good in my opinion. It's an interesting idea, and it has missions related to it, but the story is, well, let's just say it, it's dumb. There's sister drama, people coming back to life, and mercenaries brought in because, you know, it's just dumb, and while the scenes do look exceptionally good, they don't really link to what you're actually doing in the game. There's also a few of these cutscenes that are only a few seconds of the main character tossing and turning in bed with audio played over it. Now, the other problem with Specialist HQ is the tutorial voice, Frank Woods. He is awful. I mean, he sounds fine, and when he talks, well, he just shouts random military jargon and swears like a sailor, and I don't know. It shows how juvenile the writing is for these tutorial missions. Check the preview, I showed some perfect examples of how bad it is, and honestly, it's really bad. It's cringeworthy. Now, next up, let's keep moving and go to the multiplayer. Now, this is the Call of Duty multiplayer. I'd go deeper into this, but it's one of the best shooters of all time. Great progression, great gameplay, and let's be honest, they've been doing pretty much the same thing since Modern Warfare, and it's almost a science at this point. Really good gameplay, similar modes to what you've seen before, and they do a featured playlist right now. Right now, it's Prop Hunt, where you can hide as props, and the other team has to try to find you and shoot you, but there's a lot of different featured modes that come up. If you can find a match, you're going to have a good time. We'll talk about that caveat a little bit later. Though, Blackout 4 does focus on specialists a lot, like a real lot. They're kind of the secondary classes. You'll take your created class, which is really just your normal loadout, and then you'll take a character who gives you a special ability, almost like a special action, which feels like it comes through a number of kills. You can activate these special abilities when you want, as long as it's up, and boom, tons of damage. It's actually kind of a good system. I've come around on it, but it does feel somewhat similar to Overwatch. Take that as what you will. Now, let's talk about the big new mode, Battle Royale, and here it's called Blackout instead. And it's Battle Royale, let's be honest about it. It's 100 players, well, we'll talk a bit about that later as well, but let's say 100 players get into a map, last man standing gets the win, which is just a little more experience or merit, as they call it in this case. Now, Battle Royale as a topic is something I'm planning on covering one day in the near future, but here it's a merging of two really popular things. Call of Duty's gameplay, which has always been pretty popular, and it's well-made, fast-paced military shooting, along with the Battle Royale idea, which is the massive multiplayer experience. I get the combination, and it works as expected here. You also get weekly playlists as well here, such as the current Spectre mode, which with quads, 4 players, for those who aren't down with the Battle Royale lingo. And last week it was Alcatraz which allowed respawns in some way. I'm not really sold on the idea of all these different modes, but it kind of works for what I've seen. You also sometimes see zombies and more in the mode. It's odd, but it's Battle Royale. We've seen this at least 10 times already. I do have opinions, but let me save those towards the end. And finally, we get the mode that you may or may not get. If you're picking this up from the Humble Monthly Bundle or picking up the Battle Edition, well, you won't have the final mode that you're seeing on the screen, Zombies. Well, what is it like? Well, zombies. This is the same type of mode that they've had multiple times before, but the good news is there's, of course, new maps. But before I get into my main issue with the mode, I'll say this. If you love killing zombies, it's a great mode. It's mostly an intro cutscene followed by a really firm horde mode. Wave after wave of zombies appear, you kill them, you get points, you can go buy weapons, you get another wave almost right after. It's not bad, and if you enjoyed Endless Slaughter, you got it here. But here's my one thing with zombies. The opening cutscene sets up a world, usually with the idea of some goal, such as, in this case, I had to go get the artifact. That works. The problem is, the zombie mode doesn't really have a story or purpose. It's endless slaughter. But wait. Now, if you really want to get the full experience, you have to do some really random actions. For instance, on this level that we're seeing, you have to pick up an artifact, create a pack-a-punch machine, find clocks, find symbols, find more symbols, input them, kill zombies in specific locations, get a specific gun built, and more and more and more. It's a huge ordeal. If you do all of that, eventually you have this very big, long boss fight. And you know what? People probably would have loved to see this anyways. But you then get an ending cutscene. Now what? Now these are called the Easter eggs. No question about that. Everyone agrees on what it's called. But really, you're putting the ending cutscene behind a huge amount of hoops that you have to jump through that you don't even inform the player what they have to do. These aren't simple puzzles such as find the pack-a-punch. There's no indicator on the screen. You just have to hope you understand what to do next. Now, kudos to the teams who have figured all of these out. And you know what? Treyarch, you did a great job at hiding this, but that's not how you really tell a story. And zombies could be so good otherwise. I like the mode, and it's nice because it's the only mode that you can truly play solo, and that's, well, okay. So Call of Duty Black Ops 4 on PC has a rather major problem. There's not a very strong community for this game. I was able to find matches relatively easy ish, but I live on the West Coast, so I was looking at 5 p.m. I could always find a game for the most part. But around 8 p.m., the games got a little bit lighter, and at midnight, when I normally game, it's actually kind of hard to find matches. There's no indicator of what modes are hot or not, so you have to guess where people are right now. Now, the featured list becomes all I really tried to play because I ended up having to spend like 10 minutes in a waiting room hoping that someone would be playing a mode, and if no one was, there's no indicator of it. But some modes are just not popular. Blackout's featured mode usually goes pretty fast, but solo, which is my personal favorite for Battle Royale, just never got started. It could take 10 to 20 minutes and you just sit there waiting for a match. If you die fast, and it can happen, you've just wasted 20 minutes for maybe 3 minutes of game time. And I admit, I'm decent at hiding in Blackout, but I also admit that I also died in landing sometimes when someone else dropped faster, grabbed a gun, and saw my shoot. That kind of sucks. The point, though, is if you want to play solo, Black Ops 4 isn't the best place for it, especially because it's hard to get in a match at almost any time, whereas if you just want to play the featured list, that usually is always going to be running. Now, the player base here isn't very healthy. I don't know how many Blackouts are going on at the same time, but I would imagine it's probably under 10. It takes a decent time to start, and as the night goes on, the player counts drop. I know I talked about 100 players per Blackout, but that's probably false. The game says that that is the cap for solo, but the biggest I've ever seen was 80, and most times I got into solo, it was between 50 and 60. People say solo is capped, like I said, but I don't know for sure. Other modes actually are capped at 80 or 60, and I think that's actually based more on the player count than the number of people the maps were made for. They're really the same maps, in most cases just quads. Now, you can switch to the European servers if you're playing in the off hours, but that's excessive, and you're adding strange latency into your game. Now, Blackout has more problems with this than other modes because it expects 100 players. Zombies is not really geared towards multiplayer as much, it's more of a cooperative experience, and multiplayer depends on the mode, but some modes are just not as popular, it just takes longer to find a match in those, which is an acceptable trade-off. I did find most matches in multiplayer though. And this all kind of sucks, but it brings us to another issue I want to talk about. Price. Okay, so we've gone over the fact that there's no campaign, and I get it. But let me put this in a perspective that I'm seeing it through. You go into Arby's, you buy the Meat Mountain because you love meat and you hate your blood being so thin. You're going to eat it, it's great, the Meat Mountain costs you about $10, everything's good. The next day you actually go back to Arby's and you're like, one more Meat Mountain please. And they take the $10 and they go off and make it, but this time they give you a Meat Mountain that's half the size. You wonder what's going on, you take it back, you look, hey, there's no chicken parts in here. You know, they got rid of the chicken and the chicken tenders and all that. But instead there's lettuce and tomato. You go up and you complain, of course, and they say, well, we had to make adjustments. We added a ton of veggies instead of that meat that you wanted. So there's a lot of questions that you would have, but why is the sandwich the same price as it was the day before? Why should veggies, which most restaurants don't directly charge for, replace the chicken, which you were paying for? Is this a good deal? Well, of course not. Black Ops 4 took the campaign that people pay specifically to play, even if you don't, people do, and then replaced it with Blackout. But the Battle Royale mode, Blackout, as a game, isn't worth that much. Most Battle Royales are actually going for free, for two very obvious reasons. People don't want to pay for a sight-unseen Battle Royale because of player-based issues, and free means you have a rather large player base so you can do even more with it. Now, if you want Call of Duty's Battle Royale and multiplayer and zombies, yeah, technically you can pay $60, but this feels like they wanted to see if they could get away with this without spending the huge amount of money it costs for the campaign mode. And the fact is, well, it's not a good experience. Speaking of what they can get away with, I know this has gone on long for this video, so let's just do a quick version, but this is a full price game, there's every microtransaction they could do with it. And man, they're kind of sleazy this time. Now, they do have timed offerings, like a day, so you can have FOMO going on. If you've never heard of that, that's fear of missing out. You have what is a Battle Pass on Battle Royale games, here called Contraband tiers. Don't worry, Battle Pass will mean something else. And that is also a timed event. You can actually buy tiers there. The first were really bad, like 200 tiers. They've made some changes. It's now down to 50 tiers and some free tiers given away, but it's still playing the game as a job to unlock it all. You can also go and buy skins. Well, actually, you don't buy skins. You actually buy more tiers to work on because that's how it works here. And then you get your skin after beating those tiers, which doesn't make a lot of sense. There are loot boxes, of course. There's a ton of really weak options here. And then, like I said, there's a battle pass. A season pass that costs another $50 freaking dollars. What the... And even better, some of the battle pass stuff like Alcatraz has been given away for free because if you only people with battle pass had it, it's dividing the audience even more. Now, more on all of this in the written review, but Jesus, Activision, Treyarch, this is just pure greed, and it's disgusting from you guys. If you want to defend the game and say that I'm wrong on some stuff, I totally get it. Let's have a discussion down in the comments. But if you want to defend the microtransactions, don't. You really shouldn't. These companies aren't really your friends. You can say that I'm wrong about almost everything else in the review, but the microtransactions really are undefendable. Saying that you want to pay money for stuff makes no sense. Now listen, Black Ops 4 is going to sell very well. There's enough Call of Duty fans out there that will eat this up, and I'm not going to fault people. I love Dynasty Warriors. I still want to buy Dynasty Warriors 9, even though everyone has said it's one of the worst. Black Ops 4, it's great if you really love Call of Duty's multiplayer, and if you want the yearly expansion, that's where you go. But for anyone outside of a hardcore Call of Duty fan, this is extremely weak. I really can't give this a positive review. It's half of what should be in a $60 package, and honestly, no, just no. I'm going to give Black Ops 4 a 2 out of 5. It does sound like maybe it deserves worse, but it's Call of Duty, it works, it's fun at times. The graphics did suck for me, but that's probably more of my hardware. Multiplayer is enjoyable, and when I could find a match, Blackout was really good. If a bit hard. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a great Call of Duty player by any means. But the problem is seeing a $60 price tag on this game. That really doesn't work. Now, I know some people are here for the humble monthly bundle review. I would probably give the Battle Edition a lower score because I think zombies is a good part of this game and worth a decent amount. But at $12, it gets the same score, 2 out of 5. This isn't a very good game at all. I just can't give this any higher. It's just not good enough, and I think most people understand that. If you're a fan of the series and you like it, I fully get it, and if you wanted to spend $60, that's fine. But be honest with yourself. Wouldn't you have rather preferred to pay maybe $40 or even $30 for the experience? Maybe even have the battle pass packed in? Wouldn't you rather have a cheaper game or even have them give away a free battle royale mode that lets other people play against you so that you can have more people in that mode? Maybe have livelier matches? You can like Call of Duty's Black Ops 4 or just Call of Duty franchise and have wanted a more reasonable price. But don't worry, I'm sure a real Call of Duty with a campaign is certainly being released this October. That's how these things work. So you can move on to that when it comes out. And really, that's all for me. As I've said, I did have a disclosure at the beginning. I don't believe it's affected my opinion on this game. I actually had most of these complaints, including the player counts, in November, but it's gotten even worse than that. And I have played this every day for about 2 weeks now. Now, if you have gotten this far in this video, thank you very much. I know this was one of the longest videos I've made, but thank you again. Consider subscribing. It does mean a lot to me, and I would thank you for it. Even if you hate everything I've said, consider subscribing so you can hear how wrong I am about the next game. And do feel free to leave either opinion down below in the comments. They'll try to keep it a little mature. Let's just say, keep it cleaner than Frank Wood's discussions. Until next time, I'm King Link, and thank you for watching.